introduce yourself.
Okay.
Hi, welcome to the Bookish Ventures podcast. Bookish is an online magazine dedicated to writers, book promotion, and publishing. We are here today with Gini Graham-Scott, PhD, who has written several books and is involved in a lot of projects. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I've written about 100 books at this point. About 50 were published by mainstream publishers, and about 60 I've published myself through Changemakers Publishing. What else can I tell you about myself? I've been to different schools, and I've gotten a PhD in sociology. I've gotten a bunch of masters, most recently in communication. I have another one in anthropology. And so I just like being in school and studying.
And is it just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, my most recent book is The Science of Living Longer with ABC Clio. I just finished that book. And then I have a series of books on self-publishing and email marketing that I published myself because I'm doing workshops on the topics for writers on how to, because it's so difficult these days to get published by a traditional publisher, that has become a growing area, and increasingly the traditional publishers are in trouble.
Traditional publishers are definitely in trouble, and I would say, just as a comment to that, is that it is super easy to self-publish, and since a lot of publishing houses don't have a strong marketing PR arm, authors end up having to do their own marketing and PR anyhow. So self-publishing tends to be a better avenue. Plus, you can entirely control the price of the product and all of that.
So the other thing that's happened with mainstream publishing is unless you're a big celebrity and you've gotten a huge following on Twitter and the Facebook, and you've got TV shows and are doing the speaking circuit, then you can get a lot of money. But they depend on you to do a lot of the promotion and sales. But otherwise, the income is so much less than it used to be. For example, I think, at one time they used to give $10,000 advances for a midlist book, or $15,000. Now it's more like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. And I just did a couple of books with clients where I was the co-writer, ghostwriter. My name is on the book. It's either a with author or an end author. And our advances were like $2,000. I mean, it was just cool. And so they are paying to get the book written. So they pay the bulk of it, but it's just terrible for writers. And then the publisher sends out about 15 review copies, and after that, and they have you do this whole list of all the people they should contact, but they don't contact those people. Mm-hmm. And so then it's really up to you to do that follow-up.
Right. And also you hear stories like J.K. Rowling, was it about 100 rejections she received for the Harry Potter series? So maybe not good decision making by a lot of publishers anyhow. So, and some of the most successful books have been self-published. For instance, The Da Vinci Code, which was self-published and became a runaway bestseller hit. So
Amanda Hawking is another one who did a novel. And one of the things is, now there's so much self-publishing material that I don't think you're going to have the same kind of success stories for the most part, because this was in the early days of self-publishing, and so people could get recognized more so than today. And it's really all about marketing, and anybody can self-publish anything. I mean, I have clients where they send me a completed Word document, and in about 2.5 hours, I set up their account, I have their book up, and then it takes about a day to go through their approval process. And once you approve the book, about 2 or 3 hours later, it's up on Amazon. So it can be really fast. And if you have something that's very topical, the length of time that it takes a mainstream publisher to publish something is still about 12 months, 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
They get in the catalog, they do a whole bunch of things. Whereas self-publishing, like I've done a series of books on Trump, and they started off about a year ago. And I mean, there's no way that they would really even get out there. At one point, I ran it by some publishers, and they said, well, we only have about a 5-month window. This was back in February of 2016. You know, the campaign was just heating up, and there were like 7 or 8 candidates at that point. And so I started writing a series of books, and publishers said, well, we only have a very short time to market these books. And so sometimes these things, if you have a timely book, you're not going to get it out in time. Publishers not going to be interested. They ask about your platform. So it's just very, very hard these days. It's different if you've written a novel or if you've written a kid's book, because then they look at the story and the author is not so important. But for nonfiction books, it's very competitive. And especially if you have something about self-help or workplace issues. Sheryl Sandberg, you know, she got her book there because she's the COO of Facebook, or Ivanka Trump, you know, supposedly for the working woman because of who she is. There's a lot of blowback on that book right now, her being really out of touch. But she gets a lot of publicity because of who she is.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else writing the book under another name wouldn't get noticed.
Right, right. So you've mentioned Donald Trump, you've mentioned Ivanka Trump. So let's talk about Donald Trump. Thoughts?
Okay.
Well, and you know, every day it's something crazy in the news. He's an incessant tweeter, and he just does not edit himself particularly well. He thinks Fox and Friends is the best news source ever just because they're supportive of him. He attacked the BBC in a press conference and said, "Oh, well, you're not a good news source," which is hilarious because the BBC is probably the best news source in the world. So. And I've been watching. I don't know if you've been watching. So I read the book back, I don't know, in the 90s, The Handmaid's Tale, and it's now a Hulu series. The first 4 episodes are out, which are really good. But it sets this. It's about misogyny, and it's set in an America where there is radical right conservative politics, and everything is dictated by religion. And when the book came out in 1985, I would say, oh, well, that's just fanciful. Now, the book seems oddly relevant, and I'm watching this, and I've also been rereading the book because I haven't read it since I was a teenager, and I'm thinking, wow, this scenario that Margaret Atwood poses is not so far-fetched from a lot of the discourse that I hear, political discourse that I hear in the news and from politicians. So, you know, and I was just watching the 4th episode of The Handmaid's Tale last night, so that made me start thinking about the Trump, and how this is going to impact our culture, our society for the next several decades, and how it's going to impact feminism in general.
Yeah, well, there have also been some other books that have come up, like 1984, that suddenly had a revival. And The Manchurian Candidate was a film from, I don't know, 30 years ago, and about, you know, ruling this candidate who, and so it's like, you know, all of a sudden there are these parallels, and there are comparisons now to what a dictator does. They silence the press is one thing. They get everybody to agree with them. So they have tests for loyalty. And they build up the military. And they show Trump's closeness with a lot of dictators, or he praises them. He invites Doherty to the White House, you know, for example. So So there's a lot of concerns about that. Now, I've been actually writing about all of this since for about a year when they started, and I have a website where I have 9 books now on Trump. Trump is nuts.net, and TrumpIsANut.com. So one of the more recent ones where I deal with his mental case, which psychologists and psychiatrists are suddenly noticing, is that he might have some mental disturbances, and Alzheimer's actually runs in his family. His father died of complications of that, and so I wrote this one article about this Trump. Hello?
Your phone just dropped.
I don't know. It suddenly got disconnected. So.
Well, yeah.
Trump, maybe somebody's disconnected us.
Yeah, no, I mean, Google Hangouts wouldn't have dropped it, so it had to been something in the, I don't know.
Well, anyway, I was just telling you about the Alzheimer's, and I had written this article for a dossier of early stage Alzheimer's, because the American Alzheimer's Association has the 16 signs of Alzheimer's, which.
All right, but we're not on the, hang on, we're not, oh, jeez. We're not on the air right now, so,
we're not on the air right now.
No, I gotta get us back up. I have never had a call drop. I'm calling you now.
Hello?
Hi. All right, I've never had a call drop before, so let me figure this out.
Okay. Well, maybe the Trumpians were listening and decided to drop it.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. What is this doing here? All right.
Oh, I just read about the State Department retweeting and deleting promotion of Ivanka's new book.
Oh, she's, and then she went to Germany and she got upset because she was booed when they asked her about Donald Trump and women's rights. And she's like, oh, he's totally in support of women and feminism. And it was just ridiculous. Holy fuck. All right. Hang on. Let me just start a new event. I've never had a call drop before, so I'm not sure the protocol for this. Let's see. I'm just gonna have to start a new one.
Can you edit this together? Is that something you do? Or is this sort of like a live podcast?
It's live. And now that a call has dropped for me for the first time, I guess I'm gonna have to come up with a protocol for that. Yeah, it's live because it streams live to YouTube, and then I extract the audio, and then I put it on multiple channels.
Okay. After you extract it, is it possible for me to get a copy?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Yeah, because I'd like to add it to my website or a link to it or something like that.
Okay. All right. So, look. Okay. So I refresh and it says I can resume the Hangout. So let's just pick up again. I'll just say a little something about call dropping, and then we'll just keep talking about Trump. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, we are back. Sorry that we accidentally got cut off there. But apparently there is a protocol with Google Hangouts and YouTube as to resuming a broadcast. So we were talking about Donald Trump, and one of the things that you had brought up was his possible mental instability and him meeting a lot of the symptoms of Alzheimer's.
Yes, the American Alzheimer's Association has a list of different symptoms. There's 16 different symptoms that they list, and he has almost all of them. I mean, some of the symptoms include being distracted, usually distracted, very irritable, forgetting things, and repeating things because you don't remember that you said something. So anyway, if you start looking at the patterns of his behavior, you see things that could be signs of it. So I wrote this article for the Huffington Post about that. Does Trump have early stage Alzheimer's? There were some comments by people that I read a second article, and eventually there were a whole series of articles that I put together into a book called Trumpy Dumpty. That's also on this website that I have called TrumpIsANut.com or TrumpIsNuts.net. You can also get to it. Who is Trump really? So about a year ago, I started writing articles about him. I have a book on the 2016 election fairy tales, One Monster, Myths, and Mayhem, and I started looking at different fairy tales and how he was the villain in the Big Bad Wolf, Little Red Riding Hood, of course, being Hillary, and the Big Bad Wolf, or the Three Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf, and the Boy That Cried Trump. So Snow White and the Seven Candidates, which shows you when I started writing this series. And so, one thing led to another, and then I started comparing it to monsters in mythology, the dogs, the Cerberus, the let's see, what are the ones? The Minotaur, the Hydra, the Medusa. Mm-hmm. So there were all these different characters that I compared him to. And he just became, each day there would be some crazy thing that would happen. And so then there was this children's books for when he was fighting with Cruz about Donnie and Teddy, the battles of Donnie and Teddy, and their little kids in the playground, and an adult figure comes over and says, little boys, you have to stop this. You can't do this. And so those were some of the ones. And then I teamed up with a cartoonist, and we had some comparisons where it was Trump is nuts, and we had pictures of Trump as different kinds of nuts, like peanuts and pecans and macadamia nuts, and the last one is as a nutcase, he's being taken off to a nut house. Mm-hmm. And then I started seeing these movies on Lifetime about these male animals fighting, and you see the seals, and they're fighting for territory, and they're fighting for mates, and there are these elks that are fighting, and just all the males are fighting over women, territory, and power. And so I compared him to that. And so I have another one about Trump as an animal. And so I don't know, maybe they'll send a cease and desist order if they ever find these. Then there's another one, Trump is extinct or maybe soon, where I compared him to all of these extinct dinosaurs. There's Trumposaurus, Trump, the Homo Trumpian. So it was like all these different things. And the cartoonist did the cartoons, and then I did the write-ups about what was going on at the time and why he compared to that. So there's like 9 books that I ended up doing, and I didn't really plan to. I'm not really a political writer. Mm-hmm. It's just, it was just so much was happening. And then I most recently did these videos. The one is an ode to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, you're a joke. And I got these photos from Facebook that are all over the place that I used. And then you can see them on YouTube if you go there. The most recent one was, Dear Donald Trump, are we going to war? And again, it started off as a poem, and then it turned into a video. And it's also a book, and you'll find them on Amazon and Audible and on Kindle.
So I mentioned The Handmaid's Tale. You mentioned 1984. There was an internet meme going around that pretty much said, "Dear librarian, please move 1984 to the nonfiction section of the library." uh,
Why not?
which I thought was pretty incisive. But the thing about 1984, I mean, there's a lot of elements in 1984, but I think one of them is this idea of truth versus feeling. So in 1984, people would say things even if it wasn't technically true, but you were just supposed to say those things. So, and then of course the the main character worked on crafting fake news. But they hid it so well, so you didn't know it was fake news, but it was presented as if it was actually happened. And this kind of hit home to me when I was watching the Republican National Convention, and of course Trump spoke, and then a journalist was interviewing Newt Gingrich, and he said actually, crime is just at an all-time high. This country is just messed up, and she's like, well, actually, no. Uh, Violent crime rates are actually at the lowest they've been in a decade, and there's been a downward trend in violent crimes. And he's like, well, yeah, but that's not what I feel, and that's not what the American people feel. She's like, well,
it's like Kellyanne Conway talking about alternative facts.
mm-hmm.
And there's all these falsehoods that are going out there, and something that the statistics about 91% of what he says is false. And there are people who just simply get their news not from the mainstream media anymore. I mean, they don't read the New York Times, they don't read the Washington Post, even their local papers they don't read. And so they get it like from Fox News, they get it from little snippets on the internet. And so they tend to believe him because it just seems to be their source of news. And he says, trust me, and, believe me. And usually when people say that, it's not they're going to say it's not true. But, he just does all these things that people just tend to believe. And you read about the healthcare debate, and most of the people did not read the bill.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it's going to, cover everybody, but in fact, there are statements in the bill that says that people are eliminated if you have, I don't know, any number of 100 preconditions. And based on all of that, if Trump was insurance, he wouldn't get it himself. So, I mean, it's just crazy. And so people it's so much as the media is promoting things. To get back to self-publishing, I mean, I think that, more voices need to come out about,
mm-hmm.
What people think. And, don't wait for traditional publishers because it's going to take too long. They're not going to pay you if you're not a well-known person. And then, just use self-publishing. That's what I've been doing workshops and seminars is how to quickly self-publish your book and how to promote it and get known and use the social media yourself to promote your own book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely true that you should make your voice heard. You shouldn't just have these thoughts and then not put them out there. And self-publishing is great for current events because
and it's also, they can be short. Mainstream publishers typically want a book that's about 60 to 90,000 words,
mm-hmm.
which turns into about 250 to 300 pages. Whereas if you do these short books, many people are publishing books under 50 words. I mean, under 50 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So, as long as it's 24 pages, you can publish them on Create Space, and then you turn it into a book. But if you have a few, and another good way to do it is to start with these blogs or articles, where you collect together 7 or 8 articles, and you have a 7,000 word book. And so then you just put a cover around it, which is what I did with Huffington Post and all these articles about Trump, and I've done blogs on other topics where I put them together. I went on Impossible Clients, which started off with a series of blogs about working with people in the workplace, and that's also how all these Trump books started off, as pulling together these articles that I put on Huffington Post, and then it turned into these books about Trump.
So you've written a lot of books. Can you talk about being disciplined as a writer and how a person who maybe wants to write a book, has a book plot rattling in their head, but hasn't actually sat down in front of the computer and started writing? Are there any suggestions to making yourself more disciplined as a writer?
Okay, well, a couple of things I would suggest. One is to set aside a certain time when you're going to do this, and cut off distractions. Like, don't suddenly go from thinking about writing your book, and then you check on Facebook, and you check on Twitter. I mean, don't do that. Just turn it off, be in another room, someplace else where you can be very focused. Another thing I would recommend is divide your book up. So it's not just a whole book that you're writing, but you're writing individual chapters at a time. And then you divide your chapter up into sections. So, so that would be a good thing to start with, is to just outline what it is. If you're a novelist, you work out an outline for the plot and what happens when and where. If you're writing a script, you do the same thing. For nonfiction, again, you just divide it up into chapters of what you want to say. If you need to get research for something, you set up a time to do the research for that chapter, or maybe you can do some writing and just leave some holes for that section of the book. So it can be, once you develop this time for doing it, that could be a way. So you have a signal when you go to the computer. This is what you're doing at this hour, and I'll allocate that time for it. Now, because I've been doing this for so long, I mean, I can just, at the drop of a hat, just go and start writing. And so that's no longer an issue for me. But I think initially, if somebody is trying to get prepared, they just need to have this time schedule, and then maybe post it and have it on the board. Another thing is maybe using affirmations about, I will do such and such today, and then repeat it to yourself or put it in a notebook so that you can look at it. Sometimes people do vision boards. I have a vision board book that I did. I mean, usually vision boards are these large boards that you hang up someplace. But I created a vision board book, which is also on Amazon, that has instructions on doing a vision board, and then you have blank pages where you can post little articles or pictures. And so that could be something where you focus on using your vision board to help you mind map out what you're going to write about. So some people it's linear, and some people it's more visual. But, just sort of get it down in terms of what you want to do.
So have you found that your expertise in your PhD in sociology, how has that impacted your writing?
Well, initially I started writing books about social issues, and I still do. I mean, I told this book on it started out Living Forever, and then my publisher called it The Science of Living Longer, to be a little bit more conservative about it. But there's a whole movement of people about immortality now, and trying to develop medical technologies and biotechnologies so that the people living today can, if you live long enough, for the biotechnology and medical technology catch up with you, you might be able to transfer your consciousness into some other form and essentially live forever, or maybe, reverse age your body, whatever. So there are a number of different things that people are doing these days. So I've approached this as a sociologist, looking at the different social issues involved and the implications of this. And I have several other books like that where I've looked at social impacts of different things. And I worked with a doctor on a end-of-life care book. And so I brought some of my sociology to it, and I worked with another client on a series of criminal justice books, and I wrote a section for his book on the criminal justice system. So, definitely I think that the study that I did in the beginning for my doctorate, has continued with me today, and it's led me to watch the news and do social commentaries.
So what was the subject of your dissertation? I'm just curious because I'm in the midst of a PhD program myself. So how, did the subject of your dissertation at all relate to a lot of the topics that you write about?
Well, it was I compared a spiritual growth group and a witchcraft group, and this was going back, I mean, in the 1976.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a long time ago, but you know, it's still what I would bring to it is the approach of looking at the issues that led people to believe, and normally what happens is rather than people having a belief, they get connected with people socially, and then they're drawn into the organization. And so I think you can look at it when you look at cults today or people joining political movements, that the same principle applies. You tend to get befriended by somebody, become friends with people, and they invite you to something, and then because of your social connections, you start to believe along with people. So I think maybe some of that could be operating today in terms of the Trump movement. People get drawn into the movement. They're less concerned about the beliefs initially than the fact that their neighbor or their friend or somebody in their church is also a believer. So the peer effect is really important.
And that's actually very true because the Scientology, that is probably one of the chief ways they get new people into Scientology is through connections. So they know a casting director who's part of Scientology, and then she gets them. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it got so big with the entertainment industry in Hollywood. Scientology did, was just this networking. People knew people who were Scientologists, so it became something possible for them to do and to be committed to. So yeah, I definitely hear you on
Yeah, and I would suspect that kind of thing was operating when you got these Republicans in California to vote along with the majority.
mm-hmm.
You know, just the pressure of peers going in one direction or another direction. And I think if you look at what happened with Comey and his feelings of pressure on what to announce and what to not announce, I think that has, you know, because of peers and wanting to do the right thing, and you know, in terms of what his peers would accept. That he talks about going in one door that said speak and another one that said conceal, and then he interpreted it as the two doors, and he had a choice. And what would the other people think who were part of his evaluating him? So I think that led him in some ways to do what he did.
Mm-hmm. So what's your take on ideology? Do you think ideology is helpful, or do you think it actually harms? My position on it is ideology is an easy way to get out of thinking. So you're confronted with a choice or an issue, and you're like, well, gee, what do the Catholics think about this? What do the Republicans think about this? And then you just adopt whatever you think they think about the issue.
I think everybody has schemas in their life about what, you know, you interpret things in terms of the way you look at things. And those are based on a number of sources and family and institutions and your education and who you're associating with. So that it comes from a lot of different things. And if we had to think through absolutely everything, you know, you'd go crazy. I mean, you can't do that. So we accept certain things that are just as a matter of habit. And I think, you know, ideology could be that, and people, you know, tend to just not be critical of things. I mean, and, you know, unless you're an academic and you deal with these things on a day-to-day basis and you're taught to be critical, people just tend to go about their lives. And, you know, whether you call it ideology or just habit, people just sort of do things. And I think, you know, they may not believe strongly in one thing or another, but they just act a certain way, and they may act in their best interest. Later, when I was in law school, they would talk about the judges being, you know, very analytical, yet a lot of times after they had made a gut level determination about what to do, ideology works in a similar way, where you kind of have this it's so embedded in you. You don't even think of it as an ideology, and then you just rationalize it in terms of the facts you pull together. And I'm having an echo as we talk, so I know sometimes.
Yeah, I just heard that, but that's okay. You're still coming in clear. I just occasionally hear an echo.
Yeah. So, but anyway, in terms of to get back to self-publishing, which I think is what we talked about, is that would be a topic that people could raise issues and criticize them and bring those up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely. So what book do you currently have out, or that you're promoting?
Well, there are two things that are related. One is Self-Publishing Secrets, and it's basically how to write, publish, and market a bestseller or use your book to build your business. That just came out, and it's available now on Amazon Kindle, and it will be shortly on Audible. And then the other one is the email marketing book that I wrote, and that's the complete guide to email marketing. And start off as 8 small books, which again start off as blogs, and then I put the blogs into books, and then
Mm-hmm.
the 8 books into a complete book, so people can get that on Amazon. And one of the reasons that I think it relates a lot to the self-publishing book is the fact that you can use email marketing to market your books and promote your books, to get information that you want to put in your book by using email to contact people for quotes. So people can learn a lot about how they can use email marketing as a promotional tool for a self-published book.
All right. Sounds great. So where can people, do you have a website? Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, yes, I have a couple of websites. ChangemakersPublishingandWriting.com is what I've set up for writing, to help people with writing their books and getting them published, or finding publishers. And then the other one is GiniGrahamScott.com. And that sort of highlights the books that I've written.
All right.
Or they can just put my name on Amazon, and they'll get a whole list of books, or put my name in Google, and they'll also find access to all these different websites. I have about 20 websites.
Okay. Sounds great. It has been a pleasure talking to you today. Any parting words of advice to somebody out there looking to self-publish?
I just think about how you might use the book and who your market is, so that you target a particular area. You just don't write a book for anybody, because that sort of means nobody. So you want to figure out what your message is, who it's for, and then also implement your books by doing workshops, seminars, speaking, because a lot of the money is not so much in selling the book, but in all these things that you could do. And if you have a business, it's great to write a book, because that can help to make you more visible and more credible. And then you can think of giving your book, a small book, out to potential clients.
All right. Thank you for that advice and for talking with us today. And just to let you know, if there was a blip in the middle of this broadcast, somehow a call got lost or dropped, doesn't normally happen, but we were able to resume, and I guess that's kind of what happens when you do a live broadcast. But it's
good talking to you.
good talking to you too. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.